Take two. I think I'm gonna get this one. Uh, Welcome to At the Movies with Lo and Mo, and this is episode 3. Today we are discussing.
It's episode
Shut the
4.
fuck up. Hold on, one more. So make sure you keep all of this in, but just like cut. We use like the censor thing to be like beep, like a cut in between each one. All right, take 3. This is it for real. Welcome to At the Movies with Lo and Mo, episode 4. Martin Scorsese's After Hours.
1985 flick. We're moving on up. We're almost to the 90s, everybody.
We are.
Almost made it.
It is very interesting how these movies have been staggered in release. I think it's kind of cool. We're like on track with each of the Scorsese has a lot more flicks than Cronenberg, but it's just cool to see them line up and work their way up.
Yeah, we're kind of watching them almost grow at the same time, which is interesting. Different genres, but kind of growing up together.
Sure. Speaking of genres,
I'm just picturing a sketch where like Cronenberg and Scorsese are kids and they're like growing up together in a house, you know, just trying to make movies. They're like teenagers, like yelling at each other.
Scorsese's like, put that dead squirrel down. I want to make a mafia movie. And Cronenberg is like, no, I must put this clock inside of the squirrel's dead body.
Bob's like, time for dinner. They're like, ah.
Speaking of genres, this movie is bonkers. I did not. Did you watch the trailer for this before we watched it?
I did not. No.
Okay, I didn't either. So I did not know. All I knew was that the last film, King of Comedy, was a dark comedy.
Yep.
And I knew that this was labeled the same way, like black comedy.
Yeah, kind of a stretch on the comedy.
First and foremost, what I want to say is that like there were parts in this movie that were funny, parts that made me laugh, but I think I was more scared for like a lot of the movie. There were parts of it that were genuinely like frightening. If I had read the script for this, I think I would have thought that it was like a horror, maybe not like horror, but at least like a thriller drama more than it was
100%.
a comedy. Connected this with Good Time, which I don't know if you've watched.
Have you seen
Good Time or Uncut Gems?
I've seen Uncut Gems.
So,
oh wow, yeah. Okay. I felt the same way in Uncut Gems that I felt in this movie.
Good Time. So yeah, and that's like it's definitely that. It is this man under pressure, taking like a journey throughout. Like Uncut Gems is maybe a little closer to like a week, but in Good Time, which is very similar, same director as the Safdie brothers, it is one man's journey through the city at night, except theirs is like not a comedy at all. But even the lighting reminded me of like in Good Time, it's a lot of neon. In this movie, maybe not like a ton of neon, but there's a lot of like bright colors and like weird visual choices for it. You're considering he's running through the city at night. It's like the movie spans from like 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., 7 a.m., something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's women in bright yellow dresses. There's people up all hours of the night. There's diners that are weirdly lit. And it's just, there's a lot of bright colors, I thought.
You know what else, too, in addition to the colors? It was like, so this film fits a very, like, I'm going to go into this first, I think. It fits a very, like, boxed, like, outline as far as, like, usually this is, like, when somebody first starts writing, they write, like, One Night Gone Wrong. And that's kind of like your first like jumping into it. But this is like so well done for that concept of like one man, one night that just keeps getting worse and worse. But this town that they're in, I mean, the city that they're in, it's so brightly lit. It looks like it should be, everybody should be out, but nobody's at these bars. Nobody's at these diners. Every time they go in, they're empty.
Right, and the guy even makes a comment. The bartender makes a comment when when our main character's at the bar, where he says the main character says something like, "Oh, it's like like dead tonight, or do you not usually get a lot of people at this hour?" And he was like, "No, usually it's packed right now." It is this weird thing where it's like almost like Odyssey, like the only characters that are present, the ones that the main character has to feel
Yeah,
in
it's
it.
interesting. There's, like,
There's
nobody
not
else around.
there's
There's
not like
no
random characters. There's not
nope.
like, just like extras or anything. It is just people that the main character has to deal with in his journey.
I think similar to what I said in Videodrome, how we're looking at it from the perspective of the main character. I think we're watching this movie from his eyes again, because that's why it's like we're not seeing anybody else walking down the street. We're not seeing anybody else in these diners. We're just seeing the characters that our main character Paul is interacting with, and that's it.
The reason that I didn't think this movie was a comedy first, sure, and I still think it. I guess I see it. I can see it as a comedy, but I do think it's a little bit more odd than that. Like, I don't think it's. I wouldn't recommend this movie as like a haha laugh riot to like my
No, definitely
friends
not.
and
No,
family.
it's not like a feel good sit down on a Friday, laugh with your family type of movie.
Right.
That's for sure.
So there's a description of rape in it. There's a suicide that happens in the movie. Um, but it is a dark comedy, and when the part that stands out in my mind is that when Paul leaves Marcy's apartment for the second time after she has killed herself. I guess for context, the movie starts off with Paul meeting this girl, Marcy. He starts at his day job, boring day job, and his night begins when he meets a girl named Marcy at this
Coffee
coffee
shop.
joint. Eventually goes to meet her and gets kind of wigged out because he sees a lot of she's an uncomfortable person. She has some trauma, and he's seeing stuff around her apartment that's kind of insinuating that she may be a burn victim. Um, and so he gets wigged out and leaves. She is so upset that somebody would leave her again. Presumably, this has happened before. Uh, that
Yeah, she
she commits
touches on her
suicide.
husband.
Right. Who is ironically shows up later in the film as the bartender that
Yeah.
he runs into. There's this almost like Cohen brother. I've been watching a lot of Cohen brothers lately. There's almost like this thing where a lot of these characters are interconnected in ways that you aren't expecting,
Mhm.
and that pops up. It is really this like small world kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, when
so I just
Paul
told you all of these things that aren't funny at all. But the one thing that is funny is that when he leaves the apartment the second time, after calling the police and reporting a dead body, he leaves the apartment and he slaps up a white piece of paper with marker on it that just says "dead person" with an arrow pointing
yeah,
the
he's
room
just pointing
she's
to
in.
the roof. I thought there was like that part for me was kind of funny. The part where he goes in for context too. He meets Tom. He goes to the bar. It's raining. He goes in. He ends up meeting a waitress that's sick of her job. It kind of almost replays itself again. He meets Tom, who wants to give him the money to get home, but the cash register's broken. So there's another unfortunate event that happens to Paul. Tom is hesitant to give Paul his keys to go to his apartment to get the cash register key. Paul ends up going, gets it, ends up overflowing Tom's apartment's toilet, which I thought was kind of just funny. And then while
Never comes up again.
while this is going on, there's just a bunch of burglaries going on, and now Paul's getting accused of doing them because all of these people are so on edge at this apartment. They're like holding him against the wall, like you're the guy, and he's like, no, I just want to get home. Then he goes back to the bar and finds that Tom is closed up, so he has to go to the waitress's house and kind of relive the Marcy scene all over again with someone
Right,
who's
and this
similar to
waitress
Marcy.
is this waitress is yeah. Here's what was weird, and I think that you're onto something earlier when you said we are seeing it through his eyes. Because to me, Paul is every man. Like, it's not like he's undesirable, but he's
Yeah,
not like a stud. He's not like a De Niro type. He's like an average guy.
yeah, just kind
He
of
has
like
an
just
average job.
yep, just
For
schlubbing
some
around.
reason, this night there are 2 to 3 different women that are just like so infatuated with him. Like, can't live without him, Marcy, and then the waitress who has this whole thing of like all he wants to do is go home, and she's like, "You can't leave, don't leave," and he's like, "I promise I won't leave. I'll be back in 2 minutes." And
Yeah,
then he goes to the bar, and he finds out. This is like, again, I guess I'm like smiling and laughing when I think about it, but it's like such a dark moment. Like, all this guy wants to do is get home,
yep.
and all that happens are these crazy coincidences. The bartender gets a call that his girlfriend, Marcy,
Yep.
has killed herself. So then he's like stuck
Rightfully
at the
just
bar.
loses it. Tom just goes mad. I mean, rightfully so. He just
Right.
finds out that his girlfriend killed herself. And then at this scene too, Paul looks over to the couple at the bar and was like, I don't know what to do. And they go, oh, well, you had nothing to do with it. And it just pauses. There's like this silence. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
like that was, I don't know if that was, I mean,
It,
that was
it
probably supposed to be like a comedic point, but I was like, oof.
truly is a dark comedy, like in every sense of the word. Um, I figured out my parallel, and I think I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think maybe you'll get it. So let's say Good Time is on this end of the spectrum, and it's just anxiety, drama, no, like very brief moments of comedy. It is not a comedy film. Then we have this end of the spectrum. Think what fits this mold as a movie, believe it or not, is super bad. Full comedy,
Okay.
two
I got you.
people,
Yeah, I'm with
one
you.
night. They have one mission to get to this party and to bring the alcohol to this party, and the whole journey is just interrupted by these insane events. You know, just these like random happenstance things, and that is like straight comedy. Somewhere in the middle, you have After Hour. Somewhere between this very dark, anxiety-inducing One Night in the City movie and this very funny comedy about these kids that just want to drink and have fun and party.
Yeah.
You have After Hours, the anxiety inducing story of a man that just wants to go home.
I was really waiting for this movie to Taxi Driver us or like King of Comedy us at this point. Like we've already seen in Taxi Driver and in King of Comedy these delusion main characters that are living in like a separate world. So at this point, when all of these women are coming up to Paul and they're crazy about him and they like, you know, are I guess for lack of better, they're killing themselves because they can't be with him or because of these events. I was like, I'm just waiting for the moment where Paul wakes up at his desk or he's in the coffee shop again and we never
Right.
see it. And when Scorsese was talking to the actor Griffin Dunn about playing out this role, Scorsese said, I want you to do two things. He said, I want you to refrain from sex and sleep so we can get the idea that you're paranoid throughout the thing. So in order to play out this role, he had to refrain from sex and sleep, which is why I think that I'd be great for a remake in this movie if anybody wants me to do it.
I was waiting for it. I do like the idea of the director being like, no sex. And he's like, yeah, I mean, that's gonna be kind of tough for me, but I guess if I have to do it for the job, I can do that.
I know I was reading that
Um,
and Scorsese's like, we want to have the most paranoid person we can. So no sex and no sleep. And I'm like,
who do I know? Who does that remind me of?
am I
Who do I
paranoid?
know? So I'll be it's straight up this movie, the end of this movie scared me more than literally. I'm a horror guy. You know this.
Yeah.
I watch horror movies all the time.
Everybody knows this by now.
The end of this movie, when he is hiding from a mob of people, and he is being plaster of Paris into a statue, and then the mob leaves. He's like, "All right, let me out of here," and the lady's like, "No."
Yeah. She's
It
like,
is
no, it's not
the
safe. You can't leave. You have to stay. We see that theme
it is
again where June's
seriously
like, no,
the
you can't leave.
it's because I wasn't expecting it, because this movie I wasn't expecting something like that. It is like terrified me.
It
Like
was
there are
terrifying because you can see him inside it. It wasn't like,
close up shots of the face
yeah,
with the eyes. You can see his eyes moving inside this statue, and you just know that he can't move. Seriously, it frightened me. It scared me a lot.
because earlier in the film, we first get the foreshadowing moment about the plaster of Paris because Kiki Bridges is like a well-known artist, and she's making a similar model
Statue.
with the same, he's looking scared. And later, when Paul comes back the second time, he brings that statue back to Kiki because he thinks that it was stolen. But we find out that the burglars of the movie, that was the only thing that they actually honestly bought.
Right.
So when we get to
It's
the
such a
end, and June is so determined to keep Paul there, and that plaster hardens around him, and we see his eyes, we see his mouth move, and he's just so like just frozen in time almost.
uh,
And then we see Cheech and Chong, who are the burglars of this film, drop down from the sewer grate.
such a okay. Hold on, pause. I'm imagining somebody who doesn't know anything about this movie. This video is their first exposure to it, and all they know so far is that it's a Martin Scorsese movie where a man is plastered of Paris plaster of Paris. Even though it's a comedy, he is like he is Edgar Allan Poe'd into the
Yep.
statue and then stolen by Cheech and Chong.
It was a wild ride, I have to tell you.
It is, and then they accidentally do they smash the statue?
No,
Smash the original
so
statue? Does the original?
no, the original statue gets back to Kiki's apartment. I don't think it gets smashed at
Okay,
all.
maybe the TV
The
falls out of
TV
it and gets
gets
smashed.
yeah, the TV gets broken. So when it like falls out, so when Paul tries to think he's doing a good deed, which every time he thinks he's doing a good deed, he's absolutely not. He sees Kiki's statue, and this is after he knows that there's been a string of like robberies. So he goes, "Hey," they go, "Oh, whoa!" And then the statue and the TV fall out of the truck, and the Cheech and Chong, the burglars are like, "That's what we get for paying for anything," because that was the only thing that they've ever bought was that TV and the statue. And then Paul ends up returning it to Kiki Bridges at that point.
And so they steal at the end of the film when he is being. I just love using this as a verb. Master of Paris.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time saying it.
He's stolen by Cheech and Chong, which at this point in the film, I was like, would I say something? I think I would, but also you got to keep in mind that these guys are like burglars.
Let us know in the comments what you would do if you were plastered of Paris and you had two robberies coming after you. Would you say something, or would you just want to get saved at this point? Leave a comment below, please.
Specifically, what if the burglars were Cheech and Chong? Like, what would you do? You know, but so he gets stolen, and at this point in the film, it is I'm for work, and it's just kind of this loop where the burglars pick him up. We don't know he's in there. They skirt around a corner that just happens to be in front of his office building. The statue falls out of the back of the van.
Yeah.
Smashes. All is freed, and he winds up in front of his office at the beginning of the workday, and he goes into his office covered in plaster and
Yeah,
begins his workday.
this really stuck with me because like I can't sit here and think I know that it's a concept that happens a lot, but this movie went full circle without the main character reaching his goal. So he had one goal, and it was very simple. When he wanted to go home and sleep, he was tired. Just wanted to go home and sleep. And he never gets it. He never achieves this goal in the film. So as a viewer, you kind of feel uneasy about that because mostly people would watch people go from A to B to the end of the film, and they want to see them achieve the goal or whatever they're after, you know, whether it's, you know, the love interest or the money or, you know, whatever it is. They want to see it eventually through all of the bad times. They want to see the main character succeed. The main character never succeeds. He ends up getting thrown out of a van, broken, and the gates open up as we saw them close in the beginning of the scene. We now see them open up, and Paul walks in, first one there, sits down at his desk, covered in plaster, just ready to work. And apparently they're so short-staffed that nobody cares that he's covered in plaster.
What was your reaction to this?
My reaction was very anxiety-inducing, as I mentioned earlier. I thought it was well done. I thought the scenes, the colors, the transitions, the camera angles, the dialogue, the choice of characters, I think it was well done. And I'm pretty safe to say that for some reason, this movie got lost in all of Scorsese's films. This is a tremendous film. This is excellent. This is well done on all fronts. And this should be accoladed as one of Scorsese's best films. But for some reason, it's lost in this,
No,
you know.
it's not. Scorsese is so well known, I think, for mob stuff.
Yeah,
Like, I think a lot of people, and like I'm sure there are film people out there that know that clearly that he does more than that. I think if you were just talk to somebody like the average just like moviegoer about Martin Scorsese, think Goodfellas, they think like these mob movies, and if they even if they don't think mob movies, I think they think dramas.
yeah,
I think maybe that's why this something like this, or even something like King of Comedy, quite frankly, can get kind of lost in the shuffle.
yeah. I
You
think
know,
these movies are just lost in time almost. I mean, you don't even hear about them that much anymore, or even when people are talking about them. And it's honestly, it's a shame because I really enjoyed this movie and I really enjoyed King of Comedy as well.
I like this movie. I think that sometimes, sometimes when I watch something and I'm not expecting what I get,
Yeah,
is like it is. How do I say this? Like, it doesn't like hamper my enjoyment, but it's kind of I have this initial reaction of like, oh, like that's not what I thought this was gonna be. I liked this movie, but I think that if I had watched the trailer or if I had known beforehand that it was like some kind of super bonkers, like left of field masterpiece, I think I would have maybe enjoyed it a little bit more on first watch. But what I'll say is I liked it so much that I'm really excited to watch it again because I think knowing what it is, having that warning of like this movie's crazy and you kind of just have to go with it. Um, like anybody who's watching this video before they watch the movie, I think might enjoy it more knowing what you're in for.
yeah,
Um, but I agree with you on all fronts that in terms of like technical style, this movie is like amazing. The visuals are amazing. The writing is strong. All of Scorsese's, you don't. It's so funny because you don't see his maybe his calling cards as a director on it, but it gives you a look at just how strong of a director he is, even when he's not tackling
yeah.
his first
I mean,
genre.
that's interesting because you say you don't see his calling cards on it, but people, not in our generation, but our parents' generations, like this, these are the films that they grew up watching Scorsese make. So maybe this is something. And if we have, you know, I guess I don't know how to phrase this correctly, but an older crowd watching this film, like let us know if this is what you remember from Scorsese, these earlier films, or do you remember him more for his later films like Casino and Goodfellas?
There could, yeah,
Which I
there
mean,
very well could
I mean,
be.
they are very close together. These films and Goodfellas and Casino are very close together in time in a relative standpoint. So I mean, they're not like
Okay.
far apart. But just let us know what you think
It's
of
interesting.
Scorsese.
I do like the idea that there's somebody out there that maybe they're just not interested by mafia or mob kind of stuff in terms of like film. Maybe it's just not their interest. So maybe to them, Scorsese is like comedy or comedic or dark comedy, or maybe he is these movies like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, where he nails a different kind of drama. No, yeah, definitely. If you're watching this, let us know. So we've talked about this a little bit on past episodes, but I wanted to get it nailed down. So
Yep.
we just took a minute to look at all of the Scorsese films we've watched so far.
Yeah, we're gonna do each
And
director within the episode. So the Cronenberg rankings will be with the Cronenberg ones, and Scorsese will be with Scorsese.
once we get to a point where once we get like over 10 films into one of their filmographies, we won't list them all every episode, but for now to establish ranking, um Jimmy's like I'll list off 40 Scorsese movies.
Hmm?
That'll take up a good 5 minutes.
That's fun. Yeah.
Um so I want you to go first. Go ahead and list the movies we've watched so far in order from top to bottom. I'm starting with one, two
Yeah.
to six.
So before we watched this film, my rankings from top to bottom were Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, King of Comedy, and then Raging Bull coming in at the bottom. After watching this film, I know it might surprise everybody watching slash listening, and even Aaron here, but I'm going to put After Hours as my number one Scorsese film at this time.
Whoa. Wow. Holy
Even
moly.
though it was unsettling and anxiety inducing, I have a hard time critiquing this film from any perspective, whether it's technically or script, dialogue. It was just, I don't know, it was well done. And I think that like if anybody's like really into film, I would strongly recommend this film. And I don't know, I can't say that I had a good time emotionally watching this, but I did have a good time analyzing this. And it's probably the most fun I had actually breaking down a movie in the series so far.
Wow. Very interesting. That I'm blown away. My ranking is different entirely from yours. Like not just where I'd put this movie, but the entire thing. But we are definitely on the same page in terms of having enjoyed all of these films except for with the exception of Raging Bull, which we still appreciated from a technical standpoint. Um so I'll just go ahead and give you my ranking before this film. Mine would go Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore,
Okay.
The King of Comedy, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, and Raging Bull. And I think that I would put this movie currently. So I have to think about this because I've only watched this once and I've only watched Taxi Driver once. And these were both two movies that I was left knowing that I enjoyed and knowing that I would like even more when I watched them again, but also being settled
Yeah.
first time that I experienced them. Whereas the first three movies in my ranking, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, King of Comedy, Mean Streets, right off the bat, I knew that I love those movies. Like on first watch, I love them. So I am going to put this film right now. I'm just going to put it between Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. So it's going to be my number five. But that does not say anything to the quality of it. I totally agree with Low here. I highly recommend the film, especially for people that haven't experienced Scorsese films outside of his typical fare. I think this is like as much as this movie was off-putting to me, and I that makes me even more excited to watch it again. I think this movie's like experience. We talked about how Videodrome was an experience that sticks with you. It's funny that this we watched this a week later because this is almost like the
Yeah.
Scorsese version of
It really is.
film that is an experience that sticks with you.
It really was, man. I think this one's gonna sit with me for a while, and Videodrome is still sitting with me. Honestly, I mean, it's still there.
Yeah. Next week we are going to be watching The Dead Zone
Nice.
with Christopher Walken, based on a Stephen King story. Um, this is one that I have seen before, but only once, and I am very interested in watching it again. I think it is. Maybe I should save this for the next episode, but I think, in the interest of disclosure, I think Videodrome is kind of Cronenberg at his weirdest.
Hmm.
And I think that this is kind of where he starts to maybe pivot a little bit towards, if I remember correctly, The Fly comes after Dead Zone, and though these are two films that are much less like body horror and like Cronenbergy, and a
Yeah.
little bit more like studio kind of thing. But
Make
similar to Scorsese, you still see his strong traits as a director, regardless of whether it is his typical or not.
Yeah. So if you want to, make sure you watch the Dead Zone before next week.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be that guy because I've been enjoying the series so much, and I said I wasn't going to do this, but like and subscribe if you did enjoy this,
All of our
because
socials are
we're having a
underneath
lot of
here
fun
as
doing
well.
this.
All of our socials are underneath us here in the video. Please,
We're
as
doing a
Aaron
lot of
said,
really cool stuff.
yeah, we are.
Doing like more than just at the movies. If you enjoy this content, I would appreciate it if you had a minute to check out some of our other channels and see what we're up to. We're doing a lot of cool stuff, but we're really enjoying doing this series right now, and we're already thinking about directors that we're going to tackle after these
Yep.
ones. So I hope you're enjoying our analyses, and we would love to hear from you. So go ahead, and if you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe. We really do appreciate it.
We
Thank you.
really do. Thank you. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback so far in the series, so we want to keep them going. And also, too, a nice way to support us here and the whole Lomo team is patreon.com/Lomo Media. If you are have it but don't feel inclined to do so, remember this is free and we enjoy doing it. But if you have some extra money and like to support us, we would appreciate that as well.
For sure.
But that's all I have.
That's all I have. Trying to think of a way to end this. You know what? You know what? You know what I think? I think that if Cheech was the main character in this instead of Paul, and if Cheech was plaster of Paris, I think he would have hotboxed that statue, baby.
Oh, this has been At the Movies. We'll see you next time.